Hello and welcome back to Marketplace Tech's limited series Decoding Democracy, where we're talking about misinformation and disinformation in the 2024 election. I'm Lily Jamali. Today, our focus is on online disinformation targeting non-English speaking voters here in the United States, specifically Spanish-speaking voters. I'm joined once again by Marketplace's senior Washington correspondent, Kimberly Adams. Good to see you as always, Kimberly.
Nice to see you as well, Lily, although I'm in New York today.
Oh, well, I hope it's treating you well so far. How is it there?
It's nice. Good weather.
A little less muggy than DC, I imagine. So, Kimberly, disinformation is everywhere this election season, but there's a particular set of false narratives targeting Latino and Latina voters, and we're going to be talking about that today. This is, after all, one of the most sought-after constituencies in this election.
Right, and for good reason. Pew Research says that Spanish-speaking Latino voters are a growing voter base and the second fastest, in fact, growing base of any major ethnic and racial group in the United States, especially since the 2020 election. And they think that by the time voting day comes around in November, that Latino voters are going to account for about 15% of all eligible voters. And they make up significant portions of the population in some really key swing states. Think New Mexico, California, Arizona, Texas, Florida. I mean, California, swing state sometimes. But basically, a lot of these states where there are large Latino populations are going to be on the line. And so winning those voters over in November is super important to both parties.
Yeah, we here in California might not be a swing state, but we are the ATM for the election year in every 4 years. That's what we're known for here. So let's get specific about the false or meta narratives popping up online in Spanish. For details, we spoke with Roberta Braga. She's the founder and executive director of the Digital Democracy Institute of the Americas. This is a nonprofit research group that focuses on the impact of online mis and disinformation on Latinos and Latinas.
Two examples of what we see in English and Spanish and Latino spaces are the meta-narrative of election fraud. So the framing of it being there's mass election fraud in the United States, and people are working together to change the results of elections. So that's one meta-narrative, and the claims under that tend to be things that you've probably heard before: claims of dead people voting, claims of people voting more than once, claims of polls being manipulated, claims of non-citizens voting. All of those tend to be false and misleading claims that get recycled over and over to, quote unquote, prove the false narrative that our elections are fraudulent. And the other one is immigration-related disinformation. So the larger meta-narrative tends to be people trying to depict migrants as ruining the fabric of U.S. society. And they do that by spreading false and misleading claims. So those claims could be claims that migrants are criminals, claims that migrants are entering the country to steal resources from people who've been here a long time. People will take one instance of something happening in the news and use it to just decontextualize and generalize experiences of all migrants.
And Kimberly, one of the things that really stood out to me, and you heard it right there during my conversation with Roberta, was this issue of disinformation about migrants long being a part of the narrative that we might see in, for example, what she calls English-dominant white American spaces. We've seen that for years now. Now what we're seeing is that this type of disinformation is penetrating spaces where Spanish-speaking Latinos might get their news. And so you're seeing this sort of pitting of different immigrant groups, maybe groups from different generations, again, against one another. And an example of this comes courtesy of Media Matters, which in 2022 released a report on Spanish disinformation spreading on YouTube. Here's a screenshot of a now deleted YouTube video uploaded by the Epoch Times en Español in January of 2021. The headline there, as you can see, translates into English as 432,000 plus Trump votes were eliminated in Pennsylvania, data scientists uncover. The video that we pulled that screenshot from perpetuates this conspiracy theory that ballots for former President Trump went uncounted. This claim was investigated by the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency and was found to be untrue. And by the way, we did reach out to YouTube for a comment, but did not hear back by our deadline. But we have linked to this Media Matters report on our website, marketplacetech.org. Kimberly?
Right. Speaking of Media Matters, back in 2022, I actually spoke with Brennan Sun, who's the Deputy Director of External Affairs for Media Matters for Marketplace Tech. And that was about Spanish language mis and disinformation spreading ahead of those midterm elections. And in addition to those false claims about the 2020 election being stolen, and how these videos were at the time, and to some extent, maybe even now, still slipping through the moderation algorithm, because a lot of these algorithms were designed to be filtering videos in English, not in other language.
Right.
Brennan argued at the time that this was due to YouTube not dedicating enough resources to Spanish language content uploaded to the platform. Now, at the time, we didn't also get a response from YouTube, but on this point, YouTube has previously said that their guidelines on misinformation apply to Spanish language content, and that the company regularly publishes, lists of data and videos on the publishes lists of the videos and data on the videos that are removed for violating policies. But if you think about it, a lot of Latinx people, like every other American, they're getting their news and information from all over the internet. They're getting it from YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter as well, or X, whatever. And Spanish language disinformation shows up on those platforms as well. And it's not clear yet that the algorithms are as good at catching it.
That's right. And we also have to talk about WhatsApp. This is the encrypted communication app owned by Facebook parent Meta. If you have friends or family living around the world, you know how widely used WhatsApp is. And that's certainly true among members of the Latino community. People like it because it's encrypted. But that means researchers like Roberta have a harder time tracking down where misleading posts or images or videos originally come from on the platform. But her group is trying. They've been researching this. And while, yes, most of what's happening on WhatsApp is people having conversations about their lives, there is plenty of misleading information spreading on there. WhatsApp owner Meta does provide fact-checking resources in several languages for its WhatsApp users. So let's talk a little bit about how people are responding. The Digital Democracy Institute of the Americas, that's Roberta's group, they poll and talk to people who see these false election narratives online. So we asked her, generally, how do they react to all of this? And here's what she had to say.
The majority of times what we see are that Latino communities are skeptical and uncertain. They're also discerning. So the majority of Latinos are not actually seeing and believing disinformation online. Most Latinos that we've polled actually express that they're not sure one way or the other whether certain types of content are true or false. They're open to fact-based information. They're discerning. And so it's definitely not the case that people are passively consuming this stuff.
I think this is a really interesting point because they've seen it written about in terms of, Latinos are more vulnerable to disinformation or more prone to falling for it. And Roberta wants to be clear that that's not really true. What's really true is that Latinos are being targeted more than perhaps some other communities out there,
with fewer checks to catch that mis and disinformation like we were just discussing, which, highlights something that we talked about, earlier in our Decoding Democracy series, that we need to be taking an active role with our family members in dealing with this. You have organizations like DDIA that are engaging with Latinx voters about Spanish language disinformation. There are also news organizations like the Associated Press providing fact-checking information. And the AP actually recently profiled Radio Campesina, which is a nonprofit network of Spanish language stations in Arizona, California, and Nevada. And they have been working to debunk election misinformation. And there are a lot of other folks out there doing this work. So especially when you are in those WhatsApp group chats and other kind of group chats with families and you see this stuff, there are resources out there that you can use to try to help direct friends and family to accurate information.
Absolutely. And we will also be linking to that Associated Press article that you mentioned on our website, marketplacetech.org. Well, great to see you again, Kimberly. Thank you for all the great insights.
Thank you, Lily.
That was Marketplace's senior Washington correspondent, Kimberly Adams. And thanks to all of you for joining us for another episode of Decoding Democracy. New episodes drop bi-weekly on Tuesdays. If you have any stories you'd like to share, we'd love to hear from you. So please leave a comment below. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please like and subscribe to us. Daniel Shin produced this episode, and I'm Lily Jamali.